Okay, so today we're going to be looking at taste perception. So taste seems to be the least critical of our senses, but long ago it contributed more directly to our survival. So it's believed that taste evolved to protect us from eating things that are poisonous and to ensure that we have an appetite for calories and nutrients we need. So for example, certain tastes would be bitter and that would indicate that we shouldn't eat them. Or things that tasted good, we should eat them. And that's pretty much why it was important. So from our mouth to our brain. So our perception of taste or gustation, and it's really important that you remember that word. So when they talk about taste, they're talking about gustation. That's what it's called. Remember that word, gustation. It starts with the physical stimulation of taste receptor cells in the mouth. The stimuli that produce taste sensations are chemical molecules in whatever you eat or drink. And if you happen to have a look at this particular diagram here, you'll notice that there are certain areas of the tongue that are associated with certain taste sensations. So the sour taste is actually on the side, and that's where the receptors pick it up. The salty is around the front and towards the sides. The bitter is at the back, and that's that last line of defense of you shouldn't be eating this right before it goes down the throat. And then we have the sweet area at the front. Right, so even you may even want to test it out. So if you have a piece of chocolate and put it on the tip of your tongue, right, you're more likely to, get that sweet sensation than what you would if you tried to almost directly put it on the sides and further back. I'm talking about here, right? Notice the sensation or the taste difference and where you can actually interpret the sweet. So these are the taste receptors. So taste receptors are sometimes called gustatory cells. Remember, if you're doing taste perception, we're talking about gustatory cells. So taste receptors are gustatory cells. And these are the sensory receptors that detect the chemical molecules that enable taste. And you need to highlight that bit there. They detect the chemical molecules, not the food itself, but the molecules of the food. The taste receptors are located within the taste buds. So make sure you remember that. Taste receptors are in the taste buds. Most of the taste buds are on the tongue. Most of them. Sometimes they're on the sides, but they're more prevalent on the tongue. They're also on the roof of the mouth, the sides of the mouth, under the tongue, and at the back of the mouth, on the upper part of the throat, behind the nose. And I strongly recommend that you copy this diagram out. And we're going to go through this. Remember when we looked at visual perception, we had the stimulus, then it went to reception, transduction, transmission, and then interpretation. So we're still going through those 5 steps for taste as well as vision. So first up, when you first taste a lollipop, the chemical molecules combine with your saliva on your tongue. So we're looking at the chemical molecules. They combine with the saliva. Make sure you remember that. Chemical molecules combine with the saliva. And this is going to be coming in here to the papillae. And papillae are the little bumps on your tongue, right? And you would have seen them. So you may want to go and have a look in the mirror. And you see those little bumps. They're the papillae. So the molecules stimulate the sensory receptors called taste receptors, sometimes known as gustatory receptors. So the taste receptors are located in the taste buds that are grouped within the papillae. Alright, think of it like this, and I apologize for my terrible drawing. So this is one papillae, right? And on the papillae, on the sides, are what's known as, so you've got the taste buds, right? And that's terrible drawing. I do apologize. I know I suck. Alright, so on the sides of each papillae, so there's little bumps on your tongue, you've got these taste buds, right? So you've got these taste buds on the tips of the tongue. Oh, sorry, on the sides of the tongue. So it's not the top here, it's on the sides. So these taste receptors are located in the taste buds. So in here, right, we have the taste buds that are on the papillae. So this is the papillae, the little bumps. Then what happens is the taste receptors convert the chemical molecules. So in the taste buds, see how it goes up here, right? So in the taste buds, they get transferred through the taste receptors, convert the chemical molecules into signals, because you can't send the molecules to your brain, right? The molecules actually go down to the stomach, but the signals need to actually be converted into energy that can be transferred into the brain, and that's through the facial nerve, so it can be interpreted. So the taste receptors, and this is what your tongue actually looks like. Weird and creepy. Right, so this is the papillae, these are the little bumps on your tongue, and then you've got the little taste buds here, and then they go down, all the way down there. So on the tongue, the taste buds are located within the thousands of small bumps called papillae that you can see and feel on the surface, and you really know about if you bite your tongue or burn your tongue. An individual papilla may hold one or more taste buds. So these taste buds, and remember they're the purple ones, right, may have one or more, the papilla may have one or more taste buds, and each taste bud may have 50 to 150 taste receptors. So assume that it's like, there's like 50 little dots in there, in those little purple ones. For each of those little white things there, there's about 50 to 150 taste receptors. And that's to actually taste the chemical molecule. The taste pores on the surface of the tongue open into the taste bud. So, I don't want to draw, I'm terrible at drawing, but let's assume for a second you've got the little bump, and then you've got the taste bud here. The taste pores are like little openings at the top here, right? So it's like a little hole, so it goes down there. Alright, so the taste pores on the surface of the tongue open into the taste bud, thereby connecting the surface of the tongue to the taste receptors within the taste buds. The connection is through fine gustatory hairs. So at the very top here, there are little hairs, and they're microscopic hairs, so gustatory, to do with taste, that extend from the taste receptors into the taste pores. These hairs come in contact with tastants. So tastants are the dissolved chemical molecules that can be tasted. So this is where the taste actually comes from. The hairs stimulate their connected taste receptor cells to pass signals onto sensory neurons, which transmit the messages to the brain. So we're going into perception here. So step 4/5, depending on how you want to go with this. So we've got stimulus, reception, transduction, transmission, and then perception/interpretation. We go with perception. So perception is primarily, the facial nerve carries the neural signals first to the thalamus. Remember, sensation perception goes through the thalamus, and then to the gustatory cortex. And the gustatory cortex is in the frontal lobe. The visual cortex is in the occipital lobe back here. Back here, and it's in the frontal lobe here. Alright, so the gustatory cortex processes your perception of the sweet taste of the lollipop. So you saw how we did that diagram, and I recommend you put this diagram into your books as well. When you're asked to describe the process of taste, you need to mention all those steps, so stimulus, reception, transduction, transmission, perception. You need to actually mention those 5, and you needed to relate back to the lollipop at all times. So there are 5 basic tastes, and you need to remember each of them. So you've got sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. And a lot of you may not know about that one. So the sweet taste is actually caused by sugar and its derivatives such as fructose or lactose. It is mostly acidic solutions like lemon juice, lime juice, and vinegar that taste sour. Tasting acidity helps us to judge the ripeness of food. If you've ever had off milk or off yogurt, it is the sour taste that you actually taste that tells you you shouldn't eat that. And once again, it helps with survival. Food containing table salt is mainly what we taste as salty. Bitter taste is produced by a variety of different substances and generally identified as undesirable or unpalatable. Toxic chemicals produced by poisonous plants have a bitter taste. So if you happen to get a bitter taste where it's, really, really bad, do not swallow. There's a reason why it's bitter, and there's a reason why it's helped with our survival, right? Sometimes it's bitter because it is toxic, so don't eat it or drink it. Umami is also called savory, and it's that rich mouth-filling taste of protein-based foods due to the presence of glutamate. And I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say gluten, but still, this is that. Let's say, for example, you're having something like a sausage roll or something that's like bread. Bread is a good example. Bread doesn't necessarily have a large quantity of taste, at least not the sandwich ones. That's actually umami or savory flavor. You cannot write savory in your answer though. You have to write umami. Alright, so this is a good example. You may want to put that into your notes. So, influences on taste perception. Our taste preferences are determined by perceptions that are shaped by the complex interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors. We consider the influences of age and genetics, so biological, and perceptual set, psychological, and culture, social. This is very important. Make sure you pay attention. So, there are actually purple carrots out there. There's white strawberries. And you sort of look at it and go, okay, that's not the way it should be. But we'll get into it. So this is very important. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Age. Full-term infants start out with relatively few taste buds. But during childhood, the number steadily increases until the final total is reached. Children are much more responsive to taste than adults. Right? And that's why they really, really like something or they really, really hate something, right? It's always fun to give little kids, lemon for their first time and they just hate it. So when you're a child, you have more taste buds than what you do as an adult. And that's why when you start to get older, you need to start adding more spices and you need to add salt and pepper to your food, just so you can get some sort of taste out of it. Kids, they taste everything. So there is considerable research evidence that suggests that taste perception fades with age. Highlight that. It fades with age. So taste perception fades with age. If you're not getting the hint there, I don't know how else I can help you. Genetics. And yeah, sorry, I couldn't find any other pictures. So people vary in their ability to taste. One reason is that genetic differences makes us more or less sensitive to the chemical molecules in different foods. So what you guys might actually, let's say for example, you happen to come from a culture where they heavily spice their foods, especially with, chilies and things like that. I cannot stand chilies. I would be in a lot of trouble, and none of my family can. So we are more sensitive to the chemical molecules in those foods to the point where we'll literally spit it out as soon as we put it in our mouths. So you guys wouldn't, because you've been brought up on it, and from generation to generation to generation, right? Your genetics has adapted to it. So your genes can therefore influence how sensitive we are to bitterness, sweetness, or other tastes. And there are some people out there who are what's known as super tasters, and they're born with a lot more taste buds and taste receptors, and they can actually, they taste everything. I think that'd be horrible. All right, so the last two were biological factors. This is a psychological factor, perceptual set, so food packaging and appearance. And we'll see if we can do an experiment with it next week if we have some time and we're allowed to do it. So the taste we experience is shaped by our perceptual set. This means that we often taste what we expect to taste. Remember, perceptual set is all about an expectation of things being in a certain way. Think of it this way. If you've ever had home brand Pringles and compared them with normal Pringles, I think they call them stackers if they're the home brand ones. A lot of people say that the home brand ones are not as good. Same sort of thing with Smith's chips or crinkle cut chips. That they taste better when they're, Smith's, things that you've grown up with. So we have a significant influence. So a significant influence is our expectation of how a food should look. Sometimes what we see can override what we think we taste. Past experience determines our expectations of how something should taste. Changing the known colour of a food is usually all it takes to manipulate our expectations and change the taste. So for example, if you happen to see, let's go with, a purple carrot. I have had a purple carrot, but it tastes almost exactly the same as an orange one, but it felt weird eating it. Same sort of thing, you have an expectations that, a bright orange should be, sweeter than a dull orange, because we sort of have that expectation that it's going to be off. We think that pink macaroni is probably going to be tasting worse than its normal colour. However, that's not necessarily true. You've just added food dye. Food dye doesn't have a taste. So researchers have found, for example, that orange juice tends to taste better when it is bright orange, and cheddar cheese is tastier when it's yellow rather than white. And I'm about to blow your minds here, guys. To actually sell more orange juice, some companies actually put in orange dye. Just saying. Keep that in mind. Same sort of thing, cheddar cheese is not supposed to be yellow. They do something to it to make it yellow. There's no added flavour to it, it's just yellow. So, yeah, don't always look at the colour. So packaging, labelling and branding also influence our perception of taste. For example, research participants report that Coca-Cola and peanut butter taste worse when consumed from a plain, unlabelled container than from one marked with a familiar brand. If you ever want to see a show, it's called Eat Well for Less. It was on Foxtel for a little bit, but you can see clips of it online on YouTube. And they actually rip off all the labels and just have it from white jars and things like that. And they couldn't tell the difference between what their normal product was and their actual, home brand version. So it is important to remember that just because it's in, fancy packaging does not necessarily make it better. All right. So we looked at genetics as being part of the biological. We looked at perceptual set as part of the psychological. The social is culture. So most cultures have food practices involving the use of basic ingredients, techniques, and flavor principles when cooking. Diets in Asian cultures include many more sour and bitter tastes than Western diets. So we're exposed to these cultural differences from birth, and they are reflected in our perceptual judgments of what tastes good and what tastes bad. Right? So the thing I was saying before about the chilies. Most of you guys have probably been brought up with a whole bunch of more spicier food than what I ever did as a kid, mainly because my culture pretty much ignored spice and that thing called flavour. But any kind of culture will bring their own traditions and beliefs, and this will actually affect how you see food. Alright, influence on taste perception, continuing with culture. Generally, we like and prefer tastes that we have grown up with, right? This tends to persist in childhood, but most people will eventually try new tastes when presented with the opportunity. I am saying, just because you've never eaten a cockroach before, if you happen to be in Thailand and they offer you a cockroach that's been cooked and crickets and things like that, give it a go. You only live once. It may kill you, but you'll be fine. Alright, so direct experience with different foods is one of the most important influences on taste perception. As we grow up, most of this experience occurs within a family setting. So your family will always, they will also dictate what you are going to be eating and what you will like, because you will be exposed to it from a very early age. Cultural influences on taste appear to be determined early in life, perhaps even in the uterus. So they've suggested that what your mother ate and what she liked during pregnancy may actually be transferred to you during the time that you're growing in the womb and whilst you're breastfeeding, should that have happened. And that's why they're pretty clear about what you should and shouldn't eat whilst pregnant. So research suggests, for example, that mothers can pass their food preferences onto their offspring during the months immediately before via amniotic fluid and after birth via breast milk. And they're the activities for today. Please make sure you get them done. Ask me any questions if you need to. There's some videos.